Did the earliest followers of the Jesus movement believe in his resurrection? Well, Christians always insist that he was crucified and resurrected because the Gospels say so. But fortunately, we have the Q Gospel. The Q Gospel predates all the books in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and most importantly, Paul's epistles, which came first. While the four Gospels are heavily influenced by Pauline theology, aka vicarious atonement, the resurrection, Jesus died for your sins, etc., the Q Gospel is free of Pauline doctrine. So let me read to you what John Kloppenberg on page 82 and page 83 says about Jesus' resurrection and death according to the Q Gospel. Q did not use the metaphor of resurrection, the revivification of a corpse, but the metaphor of assumption, the taking up of the righteous. Like the concept of resurrection, the notion of assumption also depends on a belief in the unity of the human person. If a person is to be caught up to heaven, it cannot merely be the soul or mind. It must involve the entire person. In the Bible, both Elijah and Enoch were said to have been removed to heaven prior to their natural deaths. And that's very important. The terminology most commonly associated with the assumption of a figure has to do with being removed from sight. He disappears, no longer appears, and no longer is seen. As 2 Kings chapter 2 verse 12 states, Elisha no longer saw Elijah. So Elijah didn't die, he just simply disappeared. God took him up to himself. The motive of non-appearance is attested earlier in the description of Enoch's disappearance in Genesis 5:24. Enoch was pleasing to God, and he was not found, for God removed him. So Enoch didn't die. God removed him. He just simply disappeared. In the account of 1 Enoch chapter 12 verse 1, the writer says, "And none of the people knew where he had been taken, and where he is, or what became of him." So Enoch simply disappeared. Nobody knew where he was, and what had become of him. And also the wisdom of Solomon employs the same idea to describe God's deliverance of the just man from persecution. So God saved the just man from persecution. In Wisdom chapter 4 verse 10 to 11, "There was one who pleased God and was loved by him, and while living among sinners, he was taken up." So he was alive, he didn't die. Seen in this context, Jesus' statement in Q 13:35 that the Jerusalemites will no longer see me recalls the description of Elijah's and Enoch's departure. So in other words, since Elijah didn't die, since Enoch didn't die, but God removed them from sight, Jesus, peace be upon him, according to Q 13:35, was also removed from sight, and the Israelites will no longer see him, which means he simply disappeared. He didn't die. Just like Elijah and Enoch. He will no longer be seen because God removed him. God removed Jesus from sight, whether before or after death. So according to Kloppenberg, it is possible that the Q community believed that Jesus was taken up to heaven before his death, which means he didn't die. And that perfectly aligns with Islamic theology and our belief in Isa alayhi salam, that he was not crucified and he didn't die, but God took him up to him. And then Kloppenberg continues, "But Q also looks forward to a future role for Jesus. I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" Q 13:35. The premature disappearance of holy persons encouraged the expectation that they had been taken away because they had yet a future role to play. God was holding them in reserve. Hence, the widespread belief that Elijah would return to play a role in the restoration or judgment of Israel, like in Malachi chapter 4 or Sirach chapter 48. And that's why John the Baptist was asked whether he is Elijah. Enoch was also expected to play a role in the future as Son of Man. 1 Enoch chapter 70 and 71. And both Baruch and Ezra were said to have been assumed to await some eschatological function. The just man of the wisdom of Solomon likewise appears in the final judgment to confound his erstwhile persecutors. And in the same way, Jesus, peace be upon him, will come back because he has a future role to play. He will defeat the Antichrist and establish peace on earth. And that's why the belief of the Q community and the theology found in Q is perfectly in line with Islam and Islamic theology about Jesus, peace be upon him. So in summary, the Q community and the Q gospel didn't believe in Jesus' resurrection, nor in his death, nor crucifixion. But they believed that he was assumed up into heaven. He was taken up into heaven just like Elijah and Enoch and the just man in the Wisdom of Solomon, who was persecuted, but God rescued him. And in the same way, the Quran says that they neither crucified him, nor did they kill him, but he was made to appear so, and God rescued him.